shattering the sanctity of our most cherished laws. The foolish human flaunts his depraved perversions with the Tholkar, dragging us all to the brink of war and destruction." Zorak screeched, his insectoid mandibles dripping with apoplectic froth. His compound eyes darted across the stunned Galactic Council, pleading for support. Sere Mother Iras rose from her crystalline perch, slowly shaking her egg-laden abdomen and broadcasting soothing pheromones. "Zorax, my clutchmate, we must comprehend the scale of this profane provocation before we unleash the horrors of total war upon the fledgling human species and engulf the cosmos in the unquenchable flames of our vengeance." Iras's chittering was muted by her stabilizing secretions. The chamber slowly relaxed. The humans were the newest species granted a probationary observer status in the Council. Their inclusion hotly debated after their brazen colonization of the forbidden death world of Krostak 7, long quarantined by the Council due to its deadly fauna. The humans had refused to eject their colonists from the planet, and reluctantly, the Council had agreed to monitor their progress to see if the humans could defy the odds and tame the untamable wilderness. As part of their agreement, the humans had allowed Council observers to follow one of the initial scouting missions into the depths of the Kroshtakian jungles, broadcasting the footage live back to the Council. When the human, Alan Burns, approached the apex predator of the planet, the dreaded Tholkar, the Council had watched enraptured, expecting to witness yet another addition to the ever-growing list of extinct species that had dared to challenge the six-legged terrors. Instead, they had watched in horror as Burns reached out a steady hand, unsheathing his dagger with the other in a smooth motion. The Tholkar's slitted pupils dilated as it focused on the human. In one swift strike, Burns severed the Tholkar's neck, watching it slump to the ground. He walked forward, patting the next snarling creature on the head, running his fingers through its coarse fur as it purred and rubbed against him. That was the feed Zorax had stormed into the Council with, demanding the humans pay for their crimes. Iras raised a spindly forelimb, commanding attention. "The humans have flouted our most sacrosanct prohibitions. This Alan Burns has demonstrated their species' true nature, a callous disregard for the sovereignty of other races and the sanctity of life itself. We must vote on the human status in this Council. All in favor of revoking their probationary status and ejecting them from Council space effective immediately?" A chorus of chittering and screeching filled the chamber as the Council prepared to vote on the fate of humanity. The humans' ambassador, a gruff man named Jack Davis, stumbled into the chamber, clearly out of breath. "Wait! Don't vote yet! Let me explain!" Davis shouted. The Council fell silent, the weight of their impending decision pressing down on the lone human. "Burns isn't some deviant or criminal. That broadcast you saw, that's humanity at its finest. We don't cower in fear from nature, we tame it, bend it to our will. The Tholkar aren't some mystical embodiment of universal laws, they're animals. Deadly, ferocious animals, but animals all the same." Zorak screeched in rage, but Davis continued undeterred. "You've all seen what we've done on Krostak 7. In a scant few years we've built cities, planted crops, and yes, domesticated the wildlife. The Tholkar aren't your gods, they're not your spirit animals. They're just another challenge for humanity to overcome, and we have." The Council erupted into chaos, a cacophony of clicking and hissing filling the chamber. Iras called for order, her pheromones barely able to quell the riot of emotions. "Ambassador Davis, you have made a compelling argument for your species' perspective. But the fact remains, your actions on Krostak 7 and the behavior of this Alan Burns character fly in the face of everything the Council stands for. We cannot abide by your reckless disregard for the established order of the universe." Davis locked eyes with Iras, his voice steady and unyielding. "Sire Mother, with all due respect, you're wrong. Humanity's entire history is a story of challenging the established order, of pushing beyond our limits and breaking free from the constraints of nature. We don't submit to your primitive superstitions and outdated taboos. We forge our own path, guided by reason and science, not fear and ignorance." Davis's voice rises, echoing through the chamber. "If you want to punish us for that, then so be it. But know this, humanity will not back down. We will not be cowed by your threats or intimidated by your posturing. We will stand firm and defend our right to explore, to discover, to push the boundaries of what is possible. Davis stares back at her, eyes blazing. And be careful that your fear does not blind you to the truth. The universe does not conform to your rules and regulations. It is vast and untamed, full of wonders and horrors beyond your imagining. Humanity is not afraid to embrace that chaos, to ride the waves of change, and emerge stronger for it. Can you say the same? Guttural roars erupt from the Tholian delegation. This insult will not stand, Zorak screeches. The human must be brought to justice. We demand his immediate arrest and extradition to face trial on our homeworld. Ambassador Hawkins jumps to his feet. With all due respect, Sire Father Zorax, I fail to see how one man's actions constitute a violation of galactic law. Alan Burns is an independent explorer, not a representative of the Earth government. We cannot be held responsible for his behavior. Zorchix's mandibles click furiously as he hisses his retort. Your species has a history of disregarding the customs and traditions of other races. This is not an isolated incident, but a pattern of disrespect and arrogance. If you will not control your own people, then we will take matters into our own hands. The Tholian delegation storms out of the council chambers, their carapaces glinting under the harsh lights. A stunned silence settles over the remaining councillors as the gravity of the situation sinks in. Hawkins turns to his aide, Sarah Chen, and mutters under his breath, "Find Burns and get him off that planet. I have a feeling this is going to get ugly fast." Chen nods sharply, already tapping away at her subspace communicator as she hurries out of the room. The feed cuts back to Kroshtak 7, where an oblivious Alan Burns continues to trek through the dense jungle. Sweat drips down his brow as he hacks through the undergrowth with his machete, marveling at the exotic flora and fauna surrounding him. As he pushes deeper into the foliage, a glint of something metallic catches his eye. Curious, Burns approaches, pushing aside a curtain of vines to reveal the entrance to an ancient stone temple, its walls covered in intricate hieroglyphs and carvings. His eyes widen as he steps inside the crumbling structure, his boots echoing on the worn flagstones. The interior is dark and musty, shafts of light filtering through cracks in the ceiling. Burns activates his shoulder-mounted flashlight, sweeping the beam across the chamber. The walls are adorned with elaborate murals, depicting strange insectoid beings engaged in what appears to be some kind of ritual. Burns moves closer, his light playing over the intricate details. He traces his fingers over the strange symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. Suddenly his subspace communicator crackles to life, startling him out of his reverie. "Burns, come in. This is Chen. We have a situation." Burns taps his earpiece, annoyed at the interruption. "What is it, Sarah? I'm kind of in the middle of something here." "The Tholians are furious. They're demanding your arrest and extradition. Ambassador Hawkins is trying to smooth things over, but it's not looking good. You need to get off that planet, now." Burns sighs, casting one last longing glance at the murals. "All right, Sarah. I'll make my way back to the spaceport, but I need to investigate this temple first. There's something here, something important." "Burns, this is not the time." Chen's voice is cut off as Burns terminates the connection. He knows she means well, but he can't walk away from this discovery. Not yet. He presses deeper into the temple, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. As he rounds a corner, he stops short, his eyes widening. Before him is a massive chamber, its walls lined with advanced technology, unlike anything he's ever seen. Glowing consoles and holographic displays flicker and pulse, casting an eerie light over the room. "What the hell?" Burns whispers, stepping closer to examine the machinery. It's clear that this technology is far beyond anything the Tholians have revealed to the galactic community. He reaches out to touch one of the consoles, but before he can make contact, the ground shakes beneath his feet. Burns stumbles, bracing himself against the wall as the temple trembles around him. Dust and debris rain down from the ceiling as a deafening roar fills the air. He races to the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. As he emerges from the temple, he skids to a halt, his breath catching in his throat. Hovering above the jungle canopy is a fleet of Tholian warships, their plasma cannons trained on the temple. And there, at the head of the armada, is Zorax himself, his compound eyes glinting with malice. Burns curses under his breath, realizing that the Sire-Father must have tracked his location. He watches as a swarm of Tholian soldiers descends from the ships, their plasma rifles at the ready. They storm the temple, their carapaces glinting in the harsh sunlight. Burns knows he's outnumbered and outgunned. He draws his sidearm, preparing to make his last stand, but as the soldiers close in, a blur of fur and claws leaps from the undergrowth, snarling and snapping at the Tholian troops. It's the Tholkar, the same creature that Burns had befriended earlier. The beast lunges at the soldiers, its fangs bared and its eyes blazing with fury. The Tholians, caught off guard by the creature's sudden appearance, hesitate, their ranks faltering. Burns seizes the opportunity, dashing back into the temple with the Tholkar at his heels. Plasma bolts sizzle through the air behind them, scorching the ancient walls and shattering the delicate murals. Burns races through the winding corridors, his heart hammering in his chest as he tries to remember the layout of the temple. The Tholkar bounds ahead of him, its powerful legs propelling it forward with incredible speed. Burns follows close behind, ducking and weaving as the Tholian soldiers give chase. He can hear their chittering and screeching echoing through the halls, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly the Tholkar skids to a halt, its hackles raised and its teeth bared. Burns nearly collides with the beast, but manages to stop himself just in time. He looks up to see a group of Tholian soldiers blocking their path, their plasma rifles leveled at his chest. Burns raises his own weapon, knowing that he's hopelessly outmatched. But before he can fire a shot, the Tholkar leaps forward, its claws raking across the nearest soldier's face. The Tholian screams in agony, his rifle clattering to the floor as he clutches at his bleeding wounds. The other soldiers open fire, but the Tholkar is too quick. It dodges and weaves, its powerful jaws snapping shut around a soldier's throat. Burns takes advantage of the chaos, firing off a few shots of his own before diving for cover behind a crumbling pillar. Plasma bolts sizzle through the air, filling the chamber with the acrid stench of ozone. Burns peers around the edge of the pillar, his eyes widening as he sees the Tholkar tearing through the Tholian ranks, its fur matted with blood and its eyes wild with rage. But even the mighty beast can't hold out forever. A plasma bolt catches it in the flank, sending it tumbling to the ground with a pained yelp. Burns curses, knowing that he can't leave the creature behind. He leaps from his hiding spot, firing off a barrage of shots as he races towards the fallen Tholkar. He scoops the beast into his arms, ignoring the searing pain as its claws dig into his flesh. The Tholkar whimpers, its eyes glazed with pain as Burns staggers towards the temple's exit. He can hear the Tholian soldiers closing in behind him, their plasma rifles humming with deadly energy. Burns bursts out of the temple, the bright sunlight momentarily blinding him. He blinks, his eyes adjusting to the glare as he scans the jungle for any sign of escape. But there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The Tholian warships hover above him, their plasma cannons trained on his position. He looks down at the Tholkar, its breathing shallow and labored. He knows that he can't leave the creature to die, not after everything it's done for him. He sets his jaw, his eyes hardening with determination as he turns to face the advancing soldiers. Burns raises his weapon, ready to make his final stand. The Tholian troops, their armor glinting in the harsh sunlight, level their plasma rifles at his chest. He can hear Zorax's voice, hissing and clicking with rage, as the Sire-Father demands his surrender. Burns takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the fight to come. He knows that the odds are stacked against him, that he's facing an enemy far more powerful than himself. But he also knows that he can't back down, not now, not ever. He lets out a roar of defiance, his voice echoing through the jungle as he charges forward, the Tholkar at his side. Plasma bolts fill the air, scorching the earth and setting the foliage ablaze. Burns dodges and weaves, his weapon spitting fire as he returns the Tholian's volleys. The Tholkar leaps and snarls, its claws raking across the soldier's armor, as it fights with the last of its strength. Burns can feel the heat of the plasma bolts sizzling past his face, can smell the acrid stench of burning flesh and metal. But he doesn't falter, doesn't hesitate. He knows that this is his moment, his chance to prove to the galaxy that humanity will not be cowed, will not be broken. He lets out another battle cry, his voice rising above the din of combat as he charges headlong into the fray, ready to face whatever fate has in store. Burns and the Thulkar burst from the temple's entrance, squinting against the harsh sunlight. The jungle clearing is eerily silent, the only sound the distant hum of the Tholian warships hovering overhead. Suddenly, the foliage rustles, and a squad of Tholian soldiers emerges, their plasma rifles trained on Burns and his companion. Zorak steps forward, his compound eyes glinting with malice. "Surrender, human, you have nowhere to run." Burns' eyes dart around the clearing, desperately searching for an escape route. Just as he's about to raise his weapon in a futile act of defiance, he notices a strange shimmering in the air behind the Tholian troops. Without warning, a human dropship uncloaks, its sleek armored hull materializing out of thin air. The ship's weapons swivel, locking onto the Tholian soldiers. The dropship's hatch hisses open, revealing Ambassador Jack Hawkins and a squad of heavily armed human soldiers in full battle gear. Hawkins steps forward, his voice amplified by the dropship's external speakers. "Stand down, Sire-Father. This is a direct violation of the Galactic Council's treaty. Withdraw your troops immediately, or we will be forced to take action." Zor-Ax's mandibles click furiously, his rage palpable. With a guttural screech, he orders his soldiers to open fire. Chaos erupts as plasma bolts and laser beams crisscross the jungle, scorching the earth and setting the foliage ablaze. Burns and the Thulkar dive for cover, the creature's powerful legs propelling them behind a fallen log. Burns returns fire, his pulse rifle spitting out a hail of plasma bolts that cut through the Tholian ranks. The human soldiers leap from the dropship, their boots slamming into the soft earth as they fan out, engaging the Tholians in close combat. The air is filled with the sizzle of plasma fire and the chatter of automatic weapons, punctuated by the screams of the wounded and dying. Burns and the Thulkar fight their way through the chaos, dodging explosions and returning fire as they make a desperate break for the dropship. Plasma bolts sear the air around them, one grazing the Thulkar's flank. The creature yelps in pain, its stride faltering. Without hesitation, Burns scoops up the wounded Thulkar, slinging the massive creature over his shoulders. He staggers towards the dropship, his muscles screaming with the effort. Hawkins lays down covering fire, his plasma rifle spitting out a steady stream of bolts that force the Tholians to take cover. As Burns reaches the dropship's ramp, he stumbles, nearly dropping the Thulkar. Hawkins rushes to his aid, helping him carry the creature into the ship's hold. The ambassador slams his fist on the hatch control, sealing the ship. "We've got to get out of here, Burns," Hawkins shouts over the din of battle. "The Tholians have called for reinforcements. This is just the beginning." The dropship's engines roar to life, the craft lifting off the ground in a swirl of dust and debris. Tholian plasma fire streaks past the hull, the ship's shields flaring as they absorb the impact. The dropship rockets into the upper atmosphere, narrowly evading a barrage of plasma fire from the Tholian warships. Burns carefully lays the wounded Thulkar on the deck, examining the creature's injury. As he tends to the beast, his mind races with the implications of his discovery in the temple. The dropship rockets towards Earth, its engines straining as it pushes through the atmosphere. Inside the cramped hold, Burns paces back and forth, his mind racing with the implications of his discovery. The wounded Thulkar lies on a makeshift bed, its chest rising and falling with labored breaths. As the ship touches down at the Earth Defense Council's headquarters, a team of medics rushes forward, carefully transferring the Thulkar to a waiting stretcher. Burns watches as they wheel the creature away, a sense of unease gnawing at his gut. Hawkins claps him on the shoulder, his face grim. "Come on, Burns, we need to debrief the council." The two men stride into the command center, where a group of high-ranking military officials and scientists await them. Burns quickly takes his place at the head of the table, his eyes scanning the faces of the assembled council members. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice steady, "what I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about the Tholians." He taps a button on the console, and a holographic display springs to life in the center of the table. Images of the Tholian temple flash across the screen, revealing the advanced technology and weaponry hidden within. The council members lean forward, their eyes widening as they take in the evidence. General Hawkins steps forward, his brow furrowed. "Are you telling us that the Tholians have been violating the Galactic treaties, building up their military in secret?" Burns nods, his face grim. "I'm afraid so, General, and that's not all." He gestures to the doorway, where the wounded Tholkar is being wheeled in on a stretcher. The council members murmur in surprise, some even recoiling at the sight of the massive creature. "This is the key to understanding the Tholians' true nature," Burns says, his voice rising with conviction. "The Tholkar are not just mindless beasts. They are intelligent, sentient beings, and the Tholians have been enslaving them for centuries." The council erupts into a flurry of questions and exclamations, but Burns holds up his hand for silence. "We have to act fast," he says, his eyes blazing with determination. "The Tholians are planning something big, and we need to find out what it is before it's too late." General Hawkins nods, his jaw set. "Agreed. We'll put together a covert ops team to infiltrate Tholian space and gather intelligence. Burns, you'll lead the mission." As the council members disperse, buzzing with excitement and trepidation, Burns finds himself alone with the Tholkar. He kneels down beside the creature, gently stroking its fur. "Don't worry, big guy," he murmurs. "We'll get to the bottom of this, and when we do, the Tholians will pay for what they've done." A soft knock at the door startles Burns from his thoughts. He looks up to see a young Tholian female standing in the doorway, her compound eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "My name is Zarana," the Tholian says, her voice trembling slightly. "I am the daughter of Zorax." Burns stiffens, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm, but Zarana holds up her claws in a gesture of peace. "Please, I mean you no harm," she says, her voice urgent. "I have come to beg for your help." Burns hesitates, his eyes narrowing. "Why should I trust you?" Zarana takes a step forward, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Because there are those among my people who oppose my father's actions. We seek a peaceful resolution to this conflict, but we cannot do it alone." Burns studies the young Tholian, searching for any sign of deceit, but he sees only desperation and sincerity in her eyes. "What do you propose?" he asks, his voice guarded. "Help me find a way to stop this war before it begins," Zarana pleads. "My father is blinded by his own ambition, but there are still those who believe in the old ways of peace and cooperation." Burns sighs, running a hand through his hair. He knows that the information he uncovers on his mission will be crucial in determining the future of human-Tholian relations. But he also knows that he cannot ignore the opportunity for a peaceful resolution. "I'll consider your proposal," he says, his voice measured. "But first I have a mission to complete." As the young Tholian slips out of the room, Burns turns back to the wounded Tholkar, his mind racing with the weight of the task ahead. He knows that he must uncover the truth behind the Tholians' military build-up, but he also knows that he cannot let this opportunity for peace slip through his fingers. Burns stands, his eyes hardening with resolve. He has a mission to complete, and he will not rest until he has uncovered the truth and brought the Tholians to justice. But he also knows that he must keep an open mind and be willing to listen to those who seek a different path. The fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance, and Burns knows that his actions in the coming days will shape the course of history. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. It is time to infiltrate Tholian space and uncover the truth behind their military build-up. But it is also time to consider the possibility of peace and to listen to those who seek a different way forward. The future is uncertain, but Burns knows one thing for sure. He will not rest until he has done everything in his power to protect the innocent and bring about a just resolution to this conflict. Burns and his team slip silently through the void of space in their stolen Tholian freighter. The ship's hull plates, thrumming with the pulse of the engines. They approach the remote moon, its cratered surface pockmarked with the harsh glare of floodlights illuminating the heavily guarded Tholian military installation. Burns checks his assault rifle one last time as Hawkins goes over the plan. "Remember, we get in, gather the intel, and get out. No heroics." The team nods grimly, their faces cast in the eerie glow of the ship's tactical displays. As they draw closer, Burns activates the freighter's advanced stealth systems, cloaking the ship from the Tholian sensor nets. They glide past the patrolling warships, the Tholian crews blissfully unaware of the human infiltration team slipping through their defenses. The freighter settles on the moon's surface, kicking up clouds of dust. Burns and his team emerge, clad in matte black stealth armor that renders them nearly invisible against the lunar landscape. They move swiftly and silently towards the base's perimeter, darting from crater to crater, evading the sweeping searchlights. At the base's edge, they encounter their first obstacle, a shimmering force field blocking their path. Hawkins pulls out a device from his pack, attaching it to the field generator. With a low hum, the device pulses, and the force field flickers and dies. The team slips inside, their boots crunching softly on the lunar soil. They make their way toward the central command complex, a looming structure of gleaming metal and pulsing energy conduits. Using grappling hooks, they scale the walls, bypassing the patrolling Tholian guards. Once inside, they split into two groups. Hawkins leads one team towards the base's reactor core, while Burns and the others head for the research labs. Using their suits' built-in hacking tools, they bypass the security locks and slip inside. What Burns finds inside the labs shocks him to his core. Row upon row of containment cells line the walls, each housing a Tholkar specimen. But these creatures are not the majestic beasts he remembers. They are twisted, augmented with cybernetic implants, and pulsing with unnatural energy. Burns hacks into a nearby terminal, his eyes widening as he scans through the research data. The Tholians have been experimenting on the Tholkar, turning them into living weapons. Genetically enhanced and controlled through neural implants, these creatures are designed to sow chaos and destruction on the battlefield. Further digging reveals the Tholians' true plan, a massive invasion of Earth and its colonies, with the augmented Tholkar serving as shock troops. The attack is set to commence in a matter of weeks, the Tholian fleets already massing on the border. Suddenly alarms blare throughout the complex. The Tholians have detected the intrusion. Burns curses, realizing they have only moments before the labs are swarmed with soldiers. He rushes to the containment cells, frantically working to open them. The first cell hisses open, and a Tholkar stumbles out, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. It snarls, lunging at Burns, but he manages to dodge aside. "Easy, big fella. I'm here to help," he says, his voice calm and steady. Burns reaches out with his mind, using the same empathic connection he shared with the Tholkar back on Kroshtak 7. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, slowly, the creature's snarls fade, replaced by a low, rumbling purr. Suddenly, the lab doors explode inward, and a squad of Tholian soldiers storms in, plasma rifles blazing. Burns dives for cover, the Tholkar leaping to his defense. The creature's claws shred through the Tholian armor like paper, scattering the soldiers like leaves in a hurricane. Burns sees an opening and sprints for the door, the Tholkar bounding after him. They race through the complex's corridors, alarms blaring and plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. Burns can hear the rest of his team engaging the Tholians over the comms, the chatter of human assault rifles, mixing with the whine of alien plasma. They round a corner and skid to a halt. A group of Tholian soldiers blocks their path, rifles raised. Burns raises his own weapon, preparing for a fight, but before he can fire, a massive explosion rocks the complex, sending the Tholians flying. Burns looks up to see Hawkins and the rest of the team, grinning triumphantly. "Charges are set. This place is going to blow in 5 minutes. We need to move now." They race towards the exit, the Tholkar bounding alongside them. Behind them, the complex begins to shudder and groan, the explosions growing louder and more frequent. They burst out into the lunar landscape, sprinting for their waiting freighter. They leap aboard, the ship's engines already whining with power. As they lift off, the complex erupts in a massive fireball, the shockwave buffeting the ship. Burns watches from the viewport as the flames consume the base, a smile spreading across his face. They had dealt a major blow to the Tholians' invasion plans, but he knows the fight is far from over. Earth needs to be warned, and preparations made for the coming storm. But for now, they have struck a decisive victory and bought precious time for humanity. The Tholkar sits beside him, its eyes no longer glowing with that unnatural light. It looks at Burns, a deep intelligence shining in its gaze. Burns knows that this creature, and others like it, will have a major role to play in the battles to come. As the freighter streaks away from the moon, Burns can't help but feel a sense of hope. They had uncovered the Tholians' plan, and now Earth has a fighting chance. The road ahead will be long and hard, but with the strength and determination of humanity and the power of their new allies, they will face it head-on. The stolen freighter slices through the void, carrying its precious cargo of hope and defiance. The Tholian invasion may be coming, but Burns and his team have shown that humanity will not go quietly into the night. They will fight, they will struggle, and they will never surrender. Burns's stolen freighter rockets away from the Tholian moonbase, alarms blaring as its hull is peppered with plasma fire. In the cargo hold, the rescued Tholkar lies on a makeshift bed, its wounds being tended to by a medic. Burns, his face smeared with soot and sweat, collapses into a seat next to Hawkins. "That was too damn close," he growls, checking his rifle. Hawkins nods grimly. "But we got the intel we needed. The Tholians won't know what hit them." The freighter punches through the atmosphere, leaving the Tholian warships behind. Burns leans back, exhaustion etched into his features. Hours later, they land at the Earth Defense Council's secret base. As the ramp lowers, they're greeted by a phalanx of armed guards and rushing medics. The wounded Tholkar is whisked away on a hover gurney, disappearing into the depths of the facility. Burns and Hawkins are ushered into a briefing room, where the council members await, their faces drawn and tense. Burns slams a data drive onto the table. "The Tholians are planning a full-scale invasion," he says flatly, "and they've been experimenting on the Tholkar, turning them into living weapons." The room erupts into a cacophony of shocked gasps and shouted questions. Burns holds up a hand, silencing them. "We have to act fast. They could launch at any moment." The council members nod, already barking orders into their comms, mobilizing Earth's defenses. One of them turns to Burns. "We'll share this intel with the Galactic Council. We need their support." Burns snorts. "Good luck with that. They're too scared of the Tholians to do a damn thing." Hours turn into days as Earth braces for war. The Galactic Council, as Burns predicted, proves hesitant to intervene directly, offering only token support. Burns paces the briefing room, frustration mounting. Suddenly an idea sparks in his mind. He turns to Hawkins. "Get me a secure line to Princess Zarana. I have a plan." The connection crackles to life, Zarana's face appearing on the screen. Burns leans forward. "Princess, I need your help. We have to expose your father's crimes to the Tholian people." Zarana's eyes widen, fear and determination warring on her face. She nods. "I'm with you. What do you need me to do?" Burns grins wolfishly. "We're going to hack the Tholian communications network, broadcast the truth to the entire planet." Days later, Burns and Zarana crouch in a darkened alley on the Tholian homeworld, disguised in stolen Tholian armor. The princess leads them through a labyrinth of backstreets, avoiding patrols, until they reach a nondescript building. Inside they find a terminal. Zarana's claws fly over the keys, her brow furrowed in concentration. Burns keeps watch, his rifle at the ready. "I'm in," Zarana whispers. "Patching you through now." Burns leans into the terminal, his face hard. "People of the Tholian Empire, my name is Alan Burns. I am a human, and I have evidence of your government's crimes." He taps a key and the screens fill with images of the secret labs, the twisted experiments, the plans for invasion. Zarana steps forward, her voice ringing with conviction. My father, Emperor Zorax, has lied to you. He has broken our most sacred laws and plans to plunge us into a war we cannot win. Rise up, my brothers and sisters. Throw off the chains of his tyranny. In the streets, Tholians stop and stare at the public screens, their mandibles clicking in shock and outrage. A murmur rises, swelling into a roar of anger. The princess speaks the truth. Down with Zorax, down with the war. The chants grow, spreading like wildfire. Tholians pour into the streets, their carapaces glinting under the harsh sun. Soldiers, torn between duty and honor, throw down their weapons and join the uprising. Launch the fleet, crush this rebellion, and bring me the heads of the traitors. The invasion fleet, already primed and ready, begins to power up their engines. The huge warships rise from their docks, the ground shaking under their thrust. On the streets, Burns and Zarana watch in horror as the ships begin to lift off. They exchange a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They have to stop those ships or all will be lost. The fate of two worlds hangs by a thread as they race towards the spaceport, desperately hoping they're not too late. Burns and Zarana board the stolen shuttle, rocketing away from the spaceport as plasma bolts sizzle past them. The Tholian warships loom ahead, their engines flaring to life. Gritting his teeth, Burns punches the throttle, pushing the shuttle to its limits. They have to reach Zorax's flagship before the fleet jumps to hyperspace. As they approach the command ship, a swarm of fighters descends upon them, their plasma cannons blazing. Burns yanks the controls, sending the shuttle into a dizzying spiral. Laser fire from the shuttle's rear turret rakes across the fighters' hulls, sending them tumbling away in balls of flame. The shuttle slams into the command ship's hangar bay, skidding across the deck plating in a shower of sparks. Burns and Zarana leap out, their weapons at the ready. A phalanx of elite Tholian guards surges forward, their plasma rifles humming with deadly energy. Suddenly a roar echoes through the hangar. The liberated Tholkar bounds into the fray, its claws and fangs ripping through the Tholian armor like paper. A group of rebel Tholians, their carapaces painted with the symbols of the resistance, joins the fight, their own weapons spitting plasma at their former comrades. Burns and Zarana press forward, fighting their way through the chaos. They blast through bulkheads and storm up access shafts, the Tholkar and the rebels covering their advance. Alarms blare and warning lights flash as they near the bridge. The doors to the bridge explode inward, and Burns and Zarana charge through the smoke. Zorax spins from the command console, his eyes blazing with rage. "Traitorous whelp!" he screeches at Zarana. "You dare betray your own blood?" Zarana levels her rifle at her father. "Your crimes betray our people. It ends now." Zorax lunges, his claws extended. Burns meets him head-on, his power armor absorbing the impact. They grapple across the bridge, smashing through consoles and equipment. Zarana races to the navigation systems, her fingers flying over the controls as she works to sabotage the fleet's hyperspace jump. The Tholkar leaps into the melee, its fangs sinking into Zorax's exoskeleton. The Sire Father screams in pain and rage, his claws raking across the creature's hide. Burns presses the attack, his armored fists pounding into Zorax's face and chest. Zorax staggers back, green ichor oozing from his wounds. He reaches for the command console, his claw hovering over a pulsing red button. "If I can't have victory," he hisses, "then none shall." He slams his claw down on the button, and a klaxon begins to wail. "Self-destruct sequence initiated," a computerized voice announces. "Detonation in T-minus 60 seconds. "Burns, we have to go!" Zarana shouts, grabbing his arm. They race from the bridge, the Tholkar bounding ahead of them. Explosions rock the ship as they sprint through the corridors, the rebel Tholians falling back to their own shuttles. They barely make it to their shuttle before the command ship is ripped apart in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave slams into the surrounding warships, setting off a chain reaction of explosions that tears through the fleet. Burns, Zarana, and the Tholkar watch from the shuttle's viewports as the Tholian invasion force is consumed in the inferno. The remaining ships, leaderless and demoralized, are swiftly surrounded by the Earth Defense Fleet and the rebel Tholian vessels. In the weeks that follow, The Galactic Council convenes an emergency session to address the Tholian crisis. Zarana, now the leader of her people, stands before the assembled delegates. She presents irrefutable evidence of her father's crimes and the atrocities committed by the Tholian military. "I come before you not as a conqueror," she declares, her voice ringing through the chamber, "but as a penitent. My people have much to atone for. We will make amends for the suffering we have caused, and we will build a new society based on the principles of peace, equality, and justice." The Council votes unanimously to support Zarana's reforms, pledging aid and resources to help the Tholian people transition to a more democratic government. The military-industrial complex that had driven Tholian aggression is dismantled, its factories and shipyards repurposed for peaceful ends. Burns watches from the gallery, the Tholkar at his side. The creature has become his constant companion, a living symbol of the bond between their two species. As Zarana concludes her speech, Burns can't help but feel a sense of hope for the future. The galaxy had come perilously close to all-out war, but in the end reason and compassion had prevailed. The road ahead would be long and difficult, with much work to be done to heal the wounds of the past. But for the first time in years, Burns allows himself to believe that a lasting peace might finally be within reach. He looks to the stars. As the shuttle streaks away from the exploding Tholian command ship, Burns slumps back in his seat, his mind reeling from the events of the past few hours. Zarana, her face lined with exhaustion, places a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's over," she says softly. "We've won." But even as the words leave her mouth, the shuttle's comm system crackles to life. A grainy image of a Tholian appears on the screen, his exoskeleton scarred and pitted. "This is Zarath, brother of Zorax," the Tholian hisses, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won, but you've only delayed the inevitable. The true Tholian Empire will rise again, and we will crush you beneath our claws." The transmission cuts out, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Burns and Zarana exchange a worried glance, realizing that their fight is far from over. Days later, Burns stands before the Galactic Council, his stance weary but resolute. He listens as Zarana outlines her plans for a new, more peaceful Tholian society, her voice ringing with conviction. But even as the Council debates and deliberates, reports begin to filter in of raids on Tholian rebel outposts and human colonies. Grainy footage shows Tholian loyalist forces, their armor emblazoned with Zarath's sigil, rampaging through the streets, leaving destruction in their wake. Burns clenches his fists, knowing that he cannot stand idly by while innocent lives are lost. He meets with Zarana and the Earth Defense Council, proposing a daring plan to eliminate the loyalist threat once and for all. "I'll lead a joint human-Tholian strike force," he says, his voice gruff with determination. "We'll hit them hard and fast, before they have a chance to regroup." The council members exchange hesitant glances, but Zarana nods, her eyes shining with trust. "You have our full support, Alan Burns. The Tholian people owe you a great debt." Burns assembles his team, handpicking the best soldiers and operatives from both the human and Tholian ranks. They train together, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses, forging a bond that transcends species. When the time comes, they strike with precision and fury, dropping from stealth ships onto the surface of the loyalist stronghold Moon. Almost immediately, they are met with fierce resistance as Zarath's fanatical followers emerge from hidden bunkers and fortified positions. Plasma bolts and laser fire crisscross the rocky terrain as Burns and his team push forward, their advanced armor and weapons barely holding against the onslaught. Suicide bombers hurl themselves at the strike force, their explosives ripping through the ranks with devastating effect. But Burns presses on, his rifle spitting death as he leads the charge. They fight through winding canyons and treacherous mountain passes, the thin atmosphere of the Moon making each breath a labored gasp. Slowly, painfully they advance, sabotaging loyalist supply depots and cutting off their lines of reinforcement. The Tholian rebels prove their worth, their knowledge of their own kind's tactics and weaknesses proving invaluable. As they near Zarath's command bunker, a chilling sight greets them, The Loyalists have turned the Tholkar, once peaceful creatures, into twisted abominations, their bodies bristling with cybernetic enhancements and their eyes glowing with a feral, unnatural light. Burns feels a sickening lurch in his gut as he recognizes one of the creatures, the same Tholkar that had saved his life on Kroshtak 7, now reduced to a mindless killing machine. With a heavy heart he raises his rifle, knowing that the creature is beyond saving. The Tholkar charges, its claws slashing and its jaws snapping, but Burns holds his ground, his finger tightening on the trigger. He turns to his team, his eyes blazing with a fury that borders on madness. "Zarath dies today," he growls, his voice barely human. "For the Tholkar, for the rebels, for every innocent life he's taken." They storm the command bunker, plasma grenades blasting through the reinforced doors. Zarath's elite guard falls before them, their weapons no match for the strike force's determination and skill. Burns kicks down the final door, revealing Zarath himself, his exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light. The Loyalist leader snarls, drawing a wicked-looking plasma blade from his belt. The two warriors clash, their weapons flashing and sparking as they duel across the command center. Burns takes a glancing blow to the shoulder, his armor sizzling as the plasma eats through the layers of ceramic and steel. But he pushes through the pain, his own blade finding its mark again and again. Zarath staggers back, his exoskeleton cracked and oozing viscous green blood. With a final desperate lunge, Burns drives his blade through Zarath's chest, the plasma hissing and spitting as it burns through the Loyalist leader's vital organs. Zarath slumps to the ground, his compound eyes dimming as the last flicker of life fades from his body. Burns staggers back, his own wounds throbbing with agony. He looks around the command center, taking in the destruction and carnage, the price of their victory written in blood and pain. But even as he surveys the grim scene, he knows that their fight is not yet over. There will be other Zaraths, other Loyalists who refuse to let go of the old ways of conquest and domination. Burns will be there to meet them, to stand against the darkness and fight for the light. For now he allows himself a moment of rest, a moment to grieve for the fallen and to hope for a brighter future. But he knows that his work is far from done. Burns stumbles from the shuttle, his armor scorched and dented, the weight of victory heavy on his shoulders. The landing pad is a sea of cheering faces, a hero's welcome for the strike team that brought an end to Zarath's reign of terror. But as the adrenaline fades, the true cost of the war hits Burns like a plasma bolt to the gut. He sees it in the haunted eyes of his fellow soldiers, in the tears of the families clutching hollows of loved ones lost. The price of peace, paid in blood and sacrifice. Burns pushes through the crowd, his steps heavy, his mind reeling with the faces of the fallen. In the days that follow, the celebrations give way to somber reflection. Memorials are held, the names of the dead etched into stone and steel. Burns stands before the sea of mourners, his voice raw as he speaks of duty and honor, of the brave souls who gave their lives so that others might live. But even as he speaks the words, he feels hollow inside. The faces of the Tholkar haunt his dreams, their cries echoing in his mind. He sees the creature that had fought by his side reduced to a mindless killing machine, put down by his own hand. Burns withdraws from the world, seeking solace in the solitude of his quarters. He stares at the walls, the silence broken only by the hum of the air recyclers and the pounding of his own heart. A soft knock at the door startles him from his reverie. He opens it to find Zarana, her compound eyes shining with concern. "Alan," she says softly, her voice a balm to his battered soul, "I know the weight you carry. Let me help you." Together they walk the streets of the city, two warriors bound by shared pain and purpose. Zarana speaks of her vision for a new era of peace, of a galaxy where humans and Tholians can live and work as one. And in her words, Burns finds a glimmer of hope, a reason to keep fighting. They begin to work on a plan, a way to honor the sacrifices of the fallen and build a better future for all. They reach out to their allies, gathering support and resources. and slowly, piece by piece, they begin to construct a sanctuary, a place where the Tholkar can live in peace and safety. So it's not easy. There are those who oppose their efforts, who see the Tholkar as nothing more than weapons to be exploited. Burns and Zarana face resistance at every turn, from bureaucrats and warlords alike. But they press on, driven by the memory of those they lost and the hope for a brighter tomorrow. They work tirelessly, pouring their hearts and souls into the sanctuary, and as the first Tholkar take their tentative steps into their new home, Burns feels a sense of purpose he hasn't known in years. But even as they celebrate their victory, trouble brews on the horizon. A group of extremists fueled by hatred and fear launch a devastating attack on the sanctuary. Burns and Zarana watch in horror as the Tholkar begin to fall, their bodies racked with a deadly virus unleashed by the attackers. They race to find a cure, working around the clock with the best minds from both their worlds. But the virus is unlike anything they've seen before, mutating and adapting at a terrifying rate. And as the Tholkar continue to succumb to the disease, Burns feels a growing sense of desperation. In a last desperate gambit, he makes a decision that will change the course of his life and the fate of the Tholkar forever. He exposes himself to the virus, letting it ravage his body, hoping against hope that his unique bond with the creatures will provide the key to a cure. For days he lies in a fever dream, his mind wandering through the memories of his life. He sees the faces of those he loved, those he lost, and those he fought to protect, and in the depths of his delirium, he finds the answer he seeks. Burns wakes to a changed world, a world where the Tholkar are free from the spectre of extinction, where humans and Tholians stand united in the face of an uncertain future. But even as he takes his first breath of clean air, he knows that his journey is nearing its end. He spends his final days in the sanctuary, surrounded by the creatures he gave everything to save. And as he feels his life slipping away, he knows that he has found his true purpose, his reason for being. With his last breath, Burns looks out over the rolling hills of the sanctuary, watching as the Tholkar play and hunt and live, finally free to be what they were always meant to be. And he knows that, in the end, it was all worth it. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.